Josh had always thought of his home as his own small corner of peace, a place where he could shut out the noise of the world, where everything made sense. Every morning he'd step outside, coffee in hand, and feel a quiet pride in what he'd built. 15 years in the same house. 15 years of shaping every inch of his yard with his own hands. The hedge was his favorite. Tall, perfectly trimmed, a green wall that marked where his world ended and the rest of it began. But that morning, something was different. The second he opened his front door, he felt it. The kind of silence that feels wrong. Then he saw it. His hedge flattened. Not just clipped, not accidentally scraped by someone making a tight turn. Someone had mowed it down. Branches snapped, leaves shredded, the soil gouged deep by fat, ugly tire tracks. Josh walked up slowly, his boots crunching over what was left. He crouched down, running his hand over the wreckage, feeling the cold truth of it. This wasn't random. It was personal. At first, he wanted to believe it was some idiot driver, some careless delivery truck that missed the driveway. But deep down, he already knew. This was no accident. Not after what had been happening lately. Fourth time in 2 weeks, something on his property had been trashed. He traced the tire tracks with his fingers, studying the pattern. Widespread, heavy vehicle, SUV, or maybe a truck. Not the kind of thing you drive around a neighborhood unless you're trying to prove a point. Then he spotted it, a shard of plastic tucked under the mangled branches. He picked it up, turning it in his hand. A piece of a headlight casing, custom, high-end. Whoever did this made a mistake, and he knew exactly who it was. Karen Douglas, head of the HOA, self-proclaimed ruler of their neighborhood. She was the kind of person who measured her power by how many rules she could force on everyone else. She'd already tried to get Josh to chop his hedge down, claimed it didn't fit the community aesthetic, but Josh wasn't interested in playing by her rules. That hedge was his line in the sand, and he wasn't about to let her erase it. But this was her answer to no. Josh stood there for a long time, letting his anger settle in his chest like a stone. He wasn't the kind of man who looked for a fight, but he wasn't about to walk away from one either. He had lived here too long, put too much into this place. He wasn't backing down. The next few days, he turned into a watchdog. Early mornings, late nights, sitting on his porch, watching, waiting. But Karen was smart, or careful. Every time something happened, it was when he wasn't looking. A quick run to the store, under the car changing the oil, 5 minutes taking out the trash. It was like they knew his every move, and the neighbors, useless. Either too scared to speak up or too cozy with Karen's HOA. Even Mrs. Henderson across the street, who never missed a thing from her perch on the porch swing, just shook her head when he asked. "They come at night," she whispered. "Quick, quiet." Josh's patience was wearing thin. He was a reasonable man, but push him too far and he pushed back. He didn't have to wait long. One night he stepped inside to grab a wrench. Just 2 minutes. When he came back out, he heard it. Low, menacing. The growl of an engine rolling slow down the street. His eyes snapped to the road. A black SUV creeping past his house. Then it hit the gas. Hard. Swerved off the road like it had been waiting for the moment. Slammed into his hedge with a crunch that echoed in his bones. Branches cracked under the weight. Metal screeched as it tore through everything in its way. And then it was gone. Red taillights disappearing into the dark. Josh stood there frozen, his hands clenched so tight his knuckles ached. That was it. They'd gone too far. And now it was his turn. He didn't sleep that night, just sat in the garage, turning the broken piece of headlight over and over in his hand. He'd been patient. He'd tried to catch them in the act, tried to be civil. But they were done playing fair. So was he. By morning, he had a plan. He spent the whole day reinforcing the hedge. Not that you could tell. On the surface, it looked worse than ever. A mess of branches and crushed leaves. But underneath, a fortress. Steel rods driven deep into the soil. Heavy stones anchoring the base. If they came back, they'd hit something that wasn't going to give. That night, he didn't stay up watching. Didn't patrol the porch with a flashlight. He just went to bed. Because if they came back, and he knew they would, they were in for a surprise. Sometime after midnight, they took the bait. Josh woke to the sound of metal shrieking, something hitting steel, hard. Then the dull thud of a car slamming into something unmovable. Silence followed, heavy and thick. Then the engine coughed. A door slammed. Cursing. Loud. Angry. Josh didn't rush. No need. They weren't going anywhere. He stepped out onto the porch. Calm as ever. There it was. The black SUV half buried in what was left of his hedge. Front end crumpled. Hood bent in half. One tire blown out. Scratches along the sides where the steel rods had torn through the paint. And standing there holding his wrist and seething was Karen's husband, Richard. Josh crossed his arms and tilted his head. Having some trouble? Richard spun around, face pale and furious. What the hell did you do? Josh took a slow step forward. Looks like you hit something. He nodded toward the wreckage. Maybe you should be more careful. Richard's jaw worked, trying to figure out how to spin this, but he had nothing. They were caught, plain and simple. And the SUV? That was a write-off. Thousands in damage. Maybe tens of thousands. Josh wasn't losing sleep over it, but he wasn't done yet. The next morning he made some calls. Friends who worked in body shops, people who knew how to find things out. And just like he figured, Karen had taken the SUV in for repairs. Didn't even try to hide it. But there was something else, something bigger. Karen wasn't just a nosy neighbor with too much time on her hands. She was connected to developers, to city officials, people who moved money and power through back channels. And Josh's house? It was sitting smack in the middle of their next big project. This wasn't about his hedge. It was about getting rid of him. Josh set his phone down. If they were willing to destroy his property just to scare him off, what else were they willing to do? He wasn't going to wait around to find out. They thought they were pulling strings, playing a game, but they forgot one thing. Josh wasn't the kind of man who folded under pressure. He flipped the whole thing on them. Josh knew they wouldn't stop. People like Langford and Karen didn't back off because someone pushed back. They came harder. He could feel it like a storm building on the horizon. And sure enough, the next evening, it hit. It was late. Josh was in his garage finishing up some work on his truck when he heard it. A knock at the front door. Not a neighborly tap. Not someone selling something. This knock was deliberate, slow, heavy. Josh wiped the grease from his hands, glanced at the clock, then headed to the door. He didn't open it right away. He flicked on the porch light and checked the peephole. A man stood there, suit, tie, too clean, too polished to belong in a neighborhood like this. He didn't work for the HOA. He wasn't one of Karen's lackeys. This was something else, someone else. Josh cracked the door, leaning against the frame like he had all the time in the world. Can I help you? The man smiled, but it wasn't friendly. It was the kind of smile you see from someone who's already decided how the conversation's going to end. Mr. Mackenzie, he said, voice smooth, practiced, I'm here to offer you a way out of your situation. Josh didn't flinch. Didn't know I was in one. That earned a chuckle. We both know you've made things complicated, but there's no need for this to get messy. The man reached into his coat, pulled out a folded document, and held it out. 3 times market value, cash offer, no strings. Josh didn't take the paper, just looked at him. And if I say no? The man's smile didn't move, but his eyes went cold. Then things get unpredictable. Josh exhaled through his nose, slow and controlled. Is that a threat? A prediction, the man said. One I suggest you consider. Josh took the paper then, glanced at it, crumpled it in his fist, and let it drop on the porch. I'm not interested. For the first time, something cracked in the man's expression, irritation. Then it was gone, replaced with that same calm mask. That's disappointing, he said. He stepped back, smooth and effortless. You should sleep on it. Then he walked off, climbed into a black sedan, and drove away. Josh stood there for a while, watching, thinking. He didn't need to read the contract. He already knew what it meant. They weren't negotiating. They were warning him. And when men like that made predictions, they usually followed through. He didn't sleep that night. He double-checked every lock, tested every motion sensor, backed up his security footage in 3 different places. He wasn't paranoid. He was ready, because they were coming. 2 days later, they made their move. It started small. A letter from the city citing him for code violations. Unauthorized landscaping. They demanded he remove what was left of the hedge or face daily fines. Then came the anonymous complaints. HOA violations that seemed to pop up overnight. Someone slashed his tires while he was asleep. Petty harassment. But it was just the beginning. The next time he came home, his garage was broken into. Tools scattered, workbench flipped, and in the middle of the mess, a brick with a note tied around it. 4 words scrawled in thick black marker. Last chance, Josh. His hands shook when he picked it up. Not with fear, with the cold, controlled rage of a man who had had enough. They thought he was alone. They thought he was the easy target. What they didn't know was that he'd been recording everything. Every conversation, every warning, every piece of footage of their black SUV creeping by his house, every HOA complaint, every city citation tied directly to Karen and Langford. He had dates, times, names, and he had something they didn't expect. A plan. Josh didn't call the cops. He didn't bother. They were in on it, or at least looking the other way. Karen had too many favors to cash in. Langford had deeper pockets. But there was something even those two couldn't control. The press. Josh spent the next hours uploading everything. Every file, every photo, every shred of evidence he had. Anonymous tips went out to every journalist he could find. He even found a few whistleblower hotlines. It wasn't about getting revenge anymore. It was about ending this. And then he waited. It didn't take long. By the next morning, the story was everywhere. Corrupt HOA, shady land deals, developers bribing city officials, illegal projects bulldozing homeowners out before they even knew what was happening. Josh's neighborhood became ground zero. That's when Karen showed up, right on cue. She stood on his porch, phone in hand, teeth clenched. He didn't answer at first, just watched her pace, waiting for the inevitable pounding on his door. When it came, she shouted, "Open up, Josh!" He took his time, opened the door just enough to lean against the frame. "Something I can do for you?" Her eyes were wild. "You have no idea what you've done." Josh didn't move. "Pretty sure I do." "You made yourself a target," she hissed. "You think Langford's going to let this slide? You think I'm going to let this slide?" Josh tilted his head. "You don't have a choice anymore." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You're going to regret this." Josh held up his phone. Recording, red light blinking. Karen's face drained of color. "You're on record," he said calmly. She backed away, furious but scared. Then she turned and stormed off without another word. Josh closed the door, locked it, exhaled. This wasn't over, but it was shifting. He wasn't the one on the defensive anymore. The media storm was relentless. Reports tied Langford to half a dozen shady developments. Bribes, fake permits, threats. The HOA crumbled. Board members resigned. Investigators showed up. Karen and Langford had lost control, and Josh had lit the match. By morning, there was a knock at his door again. This time it was different. Karen, disheveled, eyes red like she hadn't slept. She pushed inside without asking. "You need to take that video down," she said. "Now." Josh stayed where he was. "Good morning to you too." She was shaking, not from anger this time. Fear. "Josh, you don't get it. Langford's not like us. This isn't about HOA fines. You dragged the wrong people into this." Josh folded his arms. "It was never about my hedge, was it?" She looked away, jaw clenched. Then after a moment she nodded. "Langford wanted your land. We were supposed to make things hard for you. Push until you gave up. And you were fine with that?" She laughed, bitter and sharp. "Do you think I had a choice? You have no idea what happens if you tell him no." Josh didn't respond. "Josh," she said, voice quieter now. "If you don't walk away, he's coming after you." Josh's jaw tightened. "He already has." Karen blinked. "What?" Josh picked up his phone and flipped to his security feed. He showed her the footage. Black SUV. Parked outside his house in the middle of the night. No lights, no movement. Just sitting there, watching. "They were here," Josh said, "for over an hour." Karen's face went pale. "That's not a warning. That's a message." Josh nodded. "I got it loud and clear." And he wasn't waiting for them to act again. He grabbed his keys. "Where are you going?" Karen asked. Josh opened the door. "To finish this." She hesitated, then followed. They drove straight to City Hall. The news had already rattled the right people. Some of Langford's allies were jumping ship. Josh planned to make the rest do the same. He walked in with Karen behind him and made his way to the clerk's office, dropped a thick folder on the counter. "I need to file for an emergency hearing," he said. The receptionist blinked. "On what grounds?" "Fraud, land seizure, HOA corruption," Josh answered. "And I've got proof." Within an hour, the wheels were turning. City officials scrambled to clean up the mess. Langford's projects were put on hold. Investigations started. Permits pulled. Bank accounts frozen. Langford wasn't just exposed, he was cornered. By the next evening, Josh got the call. Langford had been arrested. Fraud, bribery, harassment, the whole thing. Karen just sat at his kitchen table staring at the news. "I thought he was untouchable," she whispered. Josh leaned back. "They always think that." The HOA was gone within days. Fines, complaints, harassment, all of it vanished. Josh stepped outside looking at what was left of his yard. The hedge was gone. But for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like he'd lost anything. He'd rebuild, plant something new, something stronger. Karen stood beside him. "You're really staying?" Josh smiled faintly. "I never planned on leaving." She looked at him for a long time. "I guess we'll be neighbors after all." Josh turned back toward his house. Better get used to it. And for the first time in weeks, his home was his again. No HOA, no Langford, no threats, just peace. Finally.